Yan. Sige. 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 Yan. Nature and form of the contract. Of the contract of sales, actually, it's what it is referring. So if you want to volunteer, you can. If you want to raise your hand, you can. If I have a question, you can. I'll record that as a participation. Okay. I want you to answer in your most logical and reasonable answers possible. You don't have to. You don't have to be excellent, naman. Okay. I just want you to understand what we're talking about. Sige. Let's start. So we'll take this article by article. So nakita niyo yung picture ko dyan. So it's a normal transaction. It's a normal sale transaction. So kung nag-order na kayo sa Lazada, bumili na sa Shopee, bumili na kayo ng cellphone nyo, bumili kayo ng mga damit nyo, that is a sale transaction. Okay? That is a sale transaction. It does not need to be in writing. Okay? It can be in oral. Okay? So every day in our life, we encounter sales whenever we purchase or whenever we sell something. Okay? So let's take this article by article. By the contract of sale, one of the contracting parties obligates himself to transfer the ownership and to deliver a determinate thing, and the other to pay, therefore, a price certain in money or its equivalent. A contract of sale may be absolute or conditional. So we'll dissect this one by one. So tapos nyo na yung oblikon nyo. Tama? So by the contract of sale. So from this word alone. Okay, yung contract na yan na sinabi na yan. Okay, meaning, ang isang sale transaction is merong 3 elements. And what are those 3 elements? Parang contract siya. Ano yung elements ng contract kung maalala niyo, obligations and contracts niyo? Merong makaalala? Wala. Sino yan? Miss May. Miss Faye? Ano to? 1. Miss Faye? Wala. Miss Faye had the 2. Wala. Si Alan.
Sir, naririnig po ba ako?
Yes. What's your name?
Alan J. Sosa, sir.
Sige. Oh. What are the 3 elements of the contract? Review to.
Consent, object, and cost, sir.
Consent, object, and cost. Okay, sige. Of the contracting parties, mag-recite ka pa rin mamaya. Sige. Thank you. Of the contracting parties, one of the contracting parties obligates. One of the contracting parties obligates himself to transfer ownership and deliver a determinate thing. So yung isa sa parties, okay, which is usually called the seller, okay, obligates himself to transfer and deliver a determinate thing. And the other, which we will call the buyer, to pay. Therefore, a price certain in money or its equivalent. So, so sa isang sale transaction, may 2 parties, wherein one party will have the obligation to transfer or deliver a determinate thing, and the other party to pay money or its equivalent. Question, Mr. Alan. Dun sa sinabi mong uh, elements ng isang contract, can you relate that to a contract of sale? Nasaan doon ang object? Nasaan doon ang consideration? Nasaan doon ang consent? Sige nga.
Okay po, sir. Medyo nade-delay po
Sige.
ata ako, sir.
Okay lang, okay lang. Hello?
Yung sa consent, sir, is yun po yung consent of the contracting parties, which is the seller and the buyer, sir. Whereas the seller obligates himself or herself to transfer the ownership and deliver a determinating to the buyer, sir, which is whereas the buyer pays for a certain price or money to the seller po. Yun po yung sa mismong consent. Dun sa mismong object po, sir, is yun po yung determinating, and then sa yung object. Yes po, sir. Tapos yung cost po,
Ano?
sir, narinig po ba ako?
Oo, narinig ka. Yung cost,
Baliktad po, sir. Yung cost po pala po, sir, is yung to deliver a determinating. And then yung sa object po yun po yung money or equivalence.
okay. But thank you for that. That is correct. Diyan kasi sa cost, sa consideration, ang cost kasi minsan ang tawag dyan consideration. Sa ibang authors, nagkakaroon sila ng disagreement regarding that. Okay, but with regards to a sale transaction, yung object mo is your determinating. Yung cost mo is yung consideration in return or in exchange for a price certain in money or its equivalent. Okay? Ganun ang pag-relay natin sa contract of sale. But nonetheless, that's a good answer. Thank you for that, Mr. Alan J. Sosa. With regards to a determinating, Mr. Sosa, if meron akong 3 sasakyan, ibebenta ko yung isa dun. Is that a determinating?
Dito lang, sir. Determinate. I think yung determinate po, sir, is yes po, sir. Kasi isa lang po yung klase niya. Like sa, for
Okay.
example, what I mean, sir, is yung car po is may
Ito
own
yung,
plate number, parang ganun po, which is isa lang po.
ito yung problem, bigay ko sa'yo. May 3 akong sasakyan, isa dun ibebenta ko is that a determinating?
Yes po, sir.
Yes. Thank you for that. Sino may other answer? Meron ba? Miss Faye. Miss Faye. O baka Miss Lynn. Miss Lynn.
Sir, good afternoon. Good evening, sir. Yes, sir,
Make sure na yung name na gamit nyo is yung... Sige.
Sir?
Make sure na yung name niya dito sa Meet is yung name niya kasi yun yung nire-record ko. Sige, Miss Lynn. Narinig ko yung mouse mo. Sige na. Yan, sir. 1. I count 1 to 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3,
Sir, at that
4.
point,
Muslim.
at that point, sir, hindi pa siya determinate. Pero at the delivery of the thing, magiging
No,
determinating na siya. Kasi,
my answer is
defined under
that.
1460,
Wait,
sir?
wait. Ako muna.
Sir?
Ako muna. Ito ang question ko. May 3 akong sasakyan, isa doon ibebenta ko. Yung isa na yun, is that a determinating? Yes or no? And then
Hello,
give your
sir.
reason. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sige. 5. You raise again next time, okay? Mr. Felimar.
Hello,
Sir,
sir.
nawala ko ba?
Hindi ka nawawala. Actually, narinig ko yung mouse mo na nagki-click kung anong research mo. I'll only give 5 seconds para para fair naman sa iyo.
Sir, hello, sir.
Okay na, si Mr. Felimar na, natawag ko na siya. Kaya
Sir, hindi po determinating.
Why?
Sir, hindi specific yung sinabi, sir. Kung ano yung sasakyan na ibebenta, ganun, sir.
Paano kung may isa akong sasakyan? Tapos
Sir, kung iisa lang po is, i-consider ko as determinating, sir.
Okay. Sige, thank you. That's correct. That's what you call determinating. Dapat naka-specify. Okay, although we will discuss this more about later, pero gusto ko lang i-discuss in advance. Kasi nandito na tayo, and dito pa lang sa Article 1458, madami ka lang mapupulot. Actually. Okay? And the other to pay therefore a price certain in money or its equivalent. And then the second paragraph is a contract of sale may be absolute or conditional. Okay, Mr. Felimar, other two. Under your law on obligations and contracts, ano yung ibig sabihin ng isang conditional obligation? If you can recall, can you recall?
Hindi, sir. Hindi ko masyadong concern.
Anong ma-recall?
Yes, sir.
Sino makarecall? Sige, Mr. Drixler Rivera.
Sir, should I distinguish the two, sir?
Oh, if you can, then you may. If you can, then you may. Sige.
As much as I could remember, sir, absolute sale, sir, the ownership transfers upon delivery, even if there are no total payment of the price that has been made yet, sir. So, let's say, for example, Felimar and Alan. Felimar sold the car to Alan, so Felimar is the seller, Alan is the buyer, for a car worth 100,000. So, it's a Felimar and Alan nag-agree sila na 10,000, 50,000 muna for down payment, and yung remaining 50,000 to be paid or payable for equal installments. So, yung ownership by virtue of absolute sale, magto-transfer na kay Alan kahit na hindi pa fully paid, kasi ownership transfers upon the delivery, either actual or constructive. Whereas in a conditional sale, sir, by the word itself, condition, so the transfer of ownership happens only upon the fulfillment of a condition, sir. So in the case of Felimar and Alan, kapag fully paid na. So that's usually the condition, din ba, sir?
You have the point. Tama naman yun. Wala namang mali dun, especially dun sa conditional, definition mo ng conditional sale. Ang sinasabi lang kasi dyan, if it's an absolute sale or absolute contract of sale, it is no longer bounded on any conditions. Pero yung sabi mo kasi sa absolute kanina, ang example mo kasi is installment. It's still bounded on a condition that the buyer will pay the installment. Kasi what happens if after the first payment or second payment, nag-default si buyer? So there will arise issues and disputes with regards to that. I-discuss ko yan later on. Pero yung sa conditional, that's okay. Okay yun sa inyong dalawa, Mr. Felimar and Mr. Drixler. Tatawagin ko pa kayo mamaya. Sige. Ayan, sabi ko kanina, consent, sabi ni Mr. Sosa, consent, object, cause, or yung sa iba, consent, object, consideration. When we say it's a contract, a sale is a consensual contract, meaning it is perfected by mere consent. Okay? When do we say that that a contract is perfected by mere consent? Mr. Felimar or Drixler? Anyone?
Sir,
Sino?
may kwan, sir, may agreement sa both parties, sir.
Paano?
Sir, by kwan, sir, for example, pwede magbigay na lang ako scenario, sir.
Sige.
For example, sir, is si seller, sir. Tinanggap niya yung kwan na, sir, yung pera ni buyer, sir. Ibig sabihin, sir, doon papasok, may contract na nangyari doon, sir.
That's what we call an implied agreement. Okay, when the seller sells and the buyer gives payment, tinanggap naman ni seller, that could be consent already. Meron tayong term dyan, meeting of the minds. There must be a meeting of the minds with regards to parties. Kahit pa walang bayaran na nangyari, there must be meeting of the minds. Ibig sabihin, merong meeting of the minds with regards to the object, yung ibebenta. And then yung price. When we say price, yung amount, okay? Or the value, whatever you want to call it. And kapag sinabi mong price, kasama lagi dyan yung manner of payment. So, let's say for example, both parties agreed that the price of the property in a sale transaction is worth 1 million pesos. There's what we call the price. But if they haven't agreed whether it will be paid on a lump sum or installment, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, wala pang agreement, walang meeting of the minds. Okay? Kaya very important itong manner of payment. Okay? Kasi kung hindi sila nagkasundo dito, kung gusto nung isa is 12 months, sa'yo gusto mo, ayun na, lump sum, walang meeting of the minds. Okay? Absence of one element negates perfection, and therefore, there is no juridical relation, there is no contract of sale. Okay, so yung important na ma-consider nyo, especially under the first paragraph of the first article, Article 1458. Yeah, and now proceed to the stages of contract of sale. We have 3 stages. We have negotiation, perfection, and consummation. When we say negotiation, ito yung negotiation stage. Diba? Kumbaga sa ligaw is, nanliligaw ka pa lang. Okay? Where one of the contracting parties indicate interest. O, diba? In the contract until perfection. So from the time there is an offer to sell or offer to buy, sabihin niyo pag mabilis until perfection. Ano kasi ang mangyayari dito sa offer to sell at offer to buy? Meron kasing instance na magka-counter offer si buyer. Let's say for example, sabi ni seller, bilhin mo na 500. Sabi ni buyer, pwede bang 400 na lang? O sige, 450. Pwede bang 420 na lang? Oh. That is what we call negotiation. From the time both parties, balik tayo dun sa meeting of the minds, both parties have agreed as to the object and to the price and to the manner of payment. Pag meron na lahat yun, they have agreed, then perfected ang contract of sale. Okay? And then perfection upon concurrence of the essential elements of the sale. Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. Okay? And then, consummation. Perform their respective undertakings. Ano itong consummation? Oh, Mr. Drixler, anong nangyari sa consummation? Rivera, Drixler.
Conservation po.
Mm-mm. Hindi
Parang
consummation.
ito na yung final stage, sir, ng sale.
Oh, anong nangyayari dyan?
Magkakaroon na ng payment and acceptance of the thing, sir.
Yun
Or the
lang?
perfection of, yeah, sir. Yung,
Payment lang?
sir.
Payment lang ba?
Kung ano naman po yung nasa contract, sir. Or yung undertakings or obligations nila, sir.
O, balik ka sa 1458. Ano yung sabi na obligation ni seller?
Hold on, sir. Let me check my notes.
Diba?
To deliver a determined thing, sir, and then the other to pay the price.
Yeah, transfer and deliver. And then si buyer is?
To pay the price po, sir.
So, yan ang nangyayari sa consummation. Although, yung mga ibang, lalo na ngayon, modernized, digitalized na lahat. Okay? Ang consummation, let's say for example, sa Lazada, kapag nag-order na kayo, in-accept nung seller at pinak na, o ginawa niya na yung transfer and deliver on his part. Pagdating sa inyo, pag na-receive nyo na sa bahay nyo, you will pay the price, consumed na yung sale transaction. Okay? Meron naman, kung bibili ka sa tindahan ng candy ba yan? O, basta ng ganyan, ng candy, okay? Ate, pabili candy, binigyan ka ng candy, binigay mo yung bayad, consummated yung sale. Okay? In a very simple sense. Ganun lang siya. Okay? Nagkakaroon lang kasi ng complications or conflicts or issues or disputes whatsoever kapag merong involved na credit, kapag hindi ka agad binabayaran or napupulong yung transfer or yung delivery, doon nagkakaroon ng kaso. Doon na gamit yung batas. Okay? Kung walang mag-a-arise na kaso, better. Okay? Oh. Is sale a mode of acquiring ownership? Anyone? Is sale a mode of acquiring ownership? Anyone? Anyone? Wala. No one in the call? Mr. Amos, John Roger.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes, why did you say so? Why yes?
According to Article 1459, sir, the vendor must have an ability to transfer ownership of the thing in order to make a sale, sir.
Oh, but is that a mode of acquiring ownership?
Yes, sir. Since when you buy a product, sir, the vendor will give you another product, and you, the buyer, will now acquire ownership of that product, sir.
Okay, sige. Isa pa. Sino pa? Sino? Mr. King Edward Owa.
Sir, sale is not a mode, but it is a title, sir.
Tanong ko nga, is it a mode of acquiring ownership?
No,
Yes
sir.
or no?
No, sir.
No, why?
sir.
Why?
Sir, because when we speak mode, it is the legal means in creating, in transferring, or in destroying ownership, sir. Whereas in sale, sir, hindi siya yung mode na tinatawag na ganun. Where ang sale lang po, it create the obligation, sir, to transfer ownership. It is a title, sir, to to create an obligation, sir.
With that, Mr. Amos. Mr. Amos, do you agree with that? Mr. John, 1,
Yes.
2, 3,
Yes. Yes,
4.
sir. Yes.
Why?
Yes, sir.
Why?
I. Oh my. Oh my gosh. Um.
No pressure, no pressure. Sige.
Sorry, sir. Sir, for me, when you sir, there are it depends naman, sir. If example, sir, if you buy a clothes, sir, if you buy
If you buy clothes,
sir, kapag sir, kapag nabenta na sa'yo yung damit na yun, sir, it means na you own it na, sir, and that is the proof is the receipt, sir, of the receipt of purchase of the product.
oh, that's why
And
you're sticking with your answer that it is a mode of acquiring ownership.
no, sir.
What then? Oh, ikaw, Mr. Uwa. Ba't sinabi mong hindi siya mode of acquiring ownership?
Sir, when we talk about mode po, kasi yun nga po yung legal way na kung saan is nagkakaroon ng ownership, ganun po,
Let's say for
nagka-transfer.
example, I sold my land to you. How did you now, as the new owner, acquire ownership over that land? Through sale?
Sir,
If binenta ko sa iyo yung lupa ko, ikaw na ngayon ang
Yes, sir.
bagong may-ari. So hindi na ako may-ari, ikaw na ang may-ari. Okay? Tama.
yes, sir.
O paano nailipat sa iyo yung ownership? Paano naging ikaw na may-ari? Dahil ba sa sale?
Yes.
Yes. So your answer
In a
should
way,
be
sir, na,
sale is a mode of acquiring ownership.
sir,
Tama. Tama. Tama ba? Tama.
sir, in a way
Oh.
po na kwan,
Bentahan kita ng lupa. Oh, ako yung may-ari, binenta ko sa iyo dahil sa pagbenta ko, ikaw na ang may-ari. Ngayon, paano nangyari na ikaw na ang may-ari? Anong dahilan? Sale ba? Yes, tama no. Sale no.
yes, sir.
Oh, so sale is a mode of acquiring ownership. Tama.
No, sir. Hindi, in a way na kwan, sir, na yung sale mismo po, yung
What? We're talking about we're incorporating this into our real life scenario. Okay, how do one acquire property? Okay, so hindi po kayo sure dalawa. So answerin natin na actually na-answer mo na. Test ko lang kung naintindihan mo. Kasi tama yung sagot mo kanina actually. Under the Civil Code, under 712 of the Civil Code, ownership and other real rights over property are acquired. Pakinggan nyo to. Ownership are acquired and transmitted by, number 1, by law, by donation, by testate and intestate succession, and in consequence of certain contracts, and by tradition. So it's either ma-acquire mo yung property by law, kung nakasaad sa batas, or by donation, pag donate sa'yo, by succession, ibig sabihin, testate, merong will, meron pala akong ano, pag testate, merong will, kapag intestate, walang will na nagawa, walang will na nagawa, walang will na nagawa yung may-ari. Diba? Last will and testament. And in consequence of certain contracts or by tradition. Ngayon, Mr. Amos or Mr. Pua, both any one of you, saan dyan papasok ang sale transaction? O Amos, Mr. Amos.
Sir, papasok po yung sale or transaction before the
Hindi.
before the
Dito sa grid ito.
ay diyan po sa ano po sa consequence of certain contracts po.
Oh, why?
Since sale is since sale is a contract that obligates the seller and the
Sige,
Sir?
nag-gets ko yung point mo. Nag-gets ko yung point mo.
since sale is a contract that obligates the seller and the buyer to exchange goods by the seller giving the determinate thing and the buyer giving the money to the giving payment to the seller, sir. The consequence of this contract, sir, it is by virtue of this consequence of this contract of sale, sir, there is a transfer of ownership po.
Okay? O how about you, Mr. Pua?
Sir, paulit nga po ng tanong.
Saan dito sa sinabi ko, itong law, donation, testate,
Yes, sir.
testate succession, consequence, tradition, saan dyan ang sale? Saan pasok din ang sale?
Wala, sir.
Wala. Okay, bakit wala?
Sir, bali parang sa sir, in terms of tradition, sir, di ba yung tradition parang delivery. Yung tradition na yun, as a consequence yun, sir, ng sale, na kung saan dun nagkakaroon ng actual na transfer ng ownership. Hence, sale, sir, is not a mode of transferring the ownership from the seller to buyer, but it is only a title which give rise to an obligation of transferring it, sir. to
Also,
the
how do we
buyer.
acquire ownership through sale?
Transfer of ownership, sir?
Oh,
What do you mean, sir? How do we?
How do we acquire ownership through sale? If hindi siya sale. Nag-gets mo ba ako? Kasi sabi mo, hindi siya mode of acquiring contract. How do we acquire then ownership if we can acquire it through sale, because sale is not a mode of acquiring ownership?
Sir, sale creates an obligation, sir, to transfer ownership, sir.
Kaya nga, how do we acquire ownership in a sale transaction? Nag-gets mo ba yung tanong?
How? Wait lang, sir. Isipin ko na, sir.
Actually, sinabi mo na rin, no? Sinabi mo na rin kanina, by tradition.
Ay, yes, sir. By tradition, sir.
By tradition kasi by delivery. Okay? That is how we acquire ownership over the property. Take note, tandaan nyo lang ito, sale is not a mode of acquiring ownership. It is the delivery that allows the buyer to acquire ownership, hindi yung sale. Sale is a representation of the transaction. Diba? It is the proof. It is a title, sabi nga ni Mr. Mr. Pua ba? Tama?
Yes, sir.
Oo, tama. Ayun. So, take note of that. Sale is not a mode of acquiring ownership. Hindi ito contract. Sale is not a mode of acquiring ownership. Okay? When we say mode, this is a legal means by which ownership is created, transferred, and destroyed. So, take note of those things. Therefore, sale does not transfer or affect ownership. Okay, sale represents or is only an evidence actually, yung contract of sale, especially if it's in writing. It's only an evidence that you bought that property, that there is a transaction that transpired. It is a title, it is a representation only. But it does not transfer or affect ownership. It is the delivery or the tradition that that transfer ownership, because that is what is stated under the law. Okay? The most that sale does is to create the obligation to transfer ownership. Di ba? Sabi natin kanina, seller has to transfer and deliver a determinate thing. Okay? I hope that is clear. This is good for two meetings, no? Sana matapos natin. Sale is a title, sabi nga ni Mr. Puwa kanina. Okay? It is a legal basis to affect ownership, but it does not it is not a mode of acquiring ownership. Okay? Kinds of contract of sale. We have the absolute and the conditional. We have discussed this kanina. Okay? Absolute and conditional. Absolute, wala lang conditions. Actually, sa contract of sale, di ba meron kayong naririnig na bumili ng lupa sa ganito, installment. Siyempre, hindi mo makasyang milyon-milyon. So, installment yan. Ang tawag dyan, contract to sell. Wait lang. Contract to sell. Ibang contract to sell sa contract of sale. Dito sa contract to sell, hindi lilipat sa iyo ang property kaagad kapag naibenta sa iyo. Dapat mabayaran mo muna sa buo. Okay? So paano mangyayari? Kapag nabayaran mo na buo yung price, saka lang mag-i-issue ng contract of sale. So isang contract to sell transaction, okay, kapag nabayaran lang yung price, saka lang mag-i-issue ng contract of sale. Dito, absolute na yung sale. Kasi wala nang conditions, kasi bayad na lahat. Conditional, property reserved for the seller until full payment of the price. Essential elements of contract of sale. Parehas siya sa elements of a contract. We have the consent. Na-discuss natin to actually kanina. Kaya maganda siya na nag-advance ako kasi mapapasadahan natin lahat actually. Consent meaning merong meeting of the minds, di ba? Na-discuss ko na to with regards to the object and the price. Dito sa consent, meron yung offer and acceptance, di ba? Sabi ko kanina, yung negotiation stage, may offer, may counter offer, di ba? Tapos pwedeng i-accept na. This is manifested through ang consent, hindi naman siya actually laging verbal or hindi siya actually laging written. It may be manifested through payment of purchase price. Di ba? Nagkaabutan. Dineclare na sa tax declaration. Nilagay na yung property doon. Oh. At nagbayad na rin ng real estate tax yung buyer. Ibig sabihin siya ng may-ari nun. Okay? But there are also instances wherein consent may be vitiated. Pag pinilit or there is force or threat against the life of a person selling, pwedeng ma-vitiate ang consent at pwede niyong ipa-annul, rescind, or ipa-nullify yung contract of sale. Okay? Kapag object naman, yung sabi natin kanina, determinating. Okay? Kung iisa lang ang sasakyan ko, yun ang ibibenta ko sa'yo, that is determinating. Pero kung 3, 5 ang sasakyan ko, isa dun bibenta ko sa'yo, that is not a determinating. Paano kung luma yung binenta sa'yo or hindi na gumagana yung binenta sa'yo? Bibilhin mo ba? particularly designated or physically segregated from all others of the same class. Okay, basta specified or determinate yung thing. Even if quantity is not determinate, as long as it can be determined without a new contract. Paano ito? Let's say, for example, meron akong bodega na panay sako ng bigas. Okay? Panay sako ng bigas. If ibibenta ko lahat yun, pero hindi ko alam kung ilang sako ang nandun, at nag-agree ka, okay, I have the obligation to deliver all of that to you. Okay? Kahit hindi natin alam yung quantity. Okay? With regards to price can never be left. Ito, advanced na naman ito. Advanced actually lahat. Price can never be left to the decision of only one party. Okay? Diyan muna tayo. Price can never be left to the decision of only one party. Why? Bakit naman? I-contract naman yan. Anyone? Carl.
Sir, kasi kapag isa lang po yung mag-a-agree, ay pag isa lang po yung magde-decision sa price po, how about po yung, kunwari po yung seller po yung magde-decision po or magsiset po ng fixed price without asking po yung buyer kung mag-a-agree po. Parang yun po yung...
Bakit sa store? Bakit sa Lazada? Bakit sa Shopee? Si seller lang nagde-determine ng price.
Sir, fix naman na po yung price ata dun, sir. Which is, sa online naman po, sir, nakikita naman na po natin yung price po, nakaset na po yung price dun. And sa atin po, as buyer po, parang decision na din natin yun if i-accept ba natin or hindi.
Pag in-accept mo,
then meron pong parang nakikipag-agree ka na din, sir. May agreement na.
there is what we call
Yung consent po nung dalawa.
tama ka dyan, Mr. Carl. Parehas tayo ng pangalan, Carl. Eric. There is consent. Although generally, or general rule, it can never be left to the decision of only one party. Kasi nga yung sabi ni Mr. Carl is unfair naman doon sa ibang tao. Pero kung yung ibang tao, in-accept niya yung price, gaya ng sa Lazada, sa Shopee, kahit nakita niya 1,000, kinlik niya yung order now or buy now, and deliver or something, ganun. That is already a consent. Okay? Okay na siya kapag ganun. But general rule can never be left to the decision of only one party. If it's left to the decision of only one party, and the other party accepts or exceeds or consents to the price, then there could be a perfected contract of sale. Take note, sabi ko kanina, sa price, importante yung manner of payment, whether lump sum or installment. Bakit? Kung nagka-agree kayo sa price, pero kung di kayo nagka-agree sa manner, walang meeting of the minds. Paano yung simulated price? Simulated meaning fictitious. Okay? Kapag sinabi natin fictitious, wala talagang price. Walang binayaran. Kumbaga nilagay lang sa contract or sinabi lang na merong binayaran. But in reality, walang binayaran. Okay? That sale could be annulled, rescinded, or nullified depending on the circumstance. Discuss natin later. Okay? Contract to sell is not a contract. Gaya ng sabi ko kanina dito sa absolute. Iba ang contract to sell. Iba ang contract of sale. Okay? Ang contract to sell, okay, it lacks what we call consent. Okay? Seller does not agree to sell or transfer ownership until the happening of the event, which is full payment of purchase price. Okay, which is a suspensive condition. Meaning, Let's say, for example, this contract to sell, okay, makikita niyo itong contract to sell, kapag ang binibenta is land, real property, land, building or house and lot. Okay? Usually contract to sell yan. Why? Because the terms are usually on an installment basis. Anong nangyayari dyan? Ang nangyayari dyan, mag-execute kayo ng contract to sell. Diba? And yung installment, para mabayaran yung full amount ng presyo, during that time, that the ownership is not transferred to the buyer. Hindi siya malilipat sa buyer. Okay? Malilipat lang siya once the purchase price is paid in full. Okay? Paano? Kapag nabayaran mo na yung buo, kunwari 5 years mong binayaran yung lupa, kapag nabayaran mo na yung buo, doon lang mag-i-issue ng tinatawag nating contract of sale or absolute contract of sale. Okay? So, contract to sell is not a contract of sale. Okay? Ibig sabihin, kapag na-complete mo itong payments, doon lang merong sale. Pero during this time, habang nagbabayad ka, walang contract of sale. Pwedeng ikaw nang gumagamit ng lupa, but the ownership remains with the seller. Okay? Seller only promises to sell. Seller retains ownership. Sabi ko. With regards to gross inadequacy of price. Ano yung gross inadequacy of price? Meaning, the original price or the fair market value, sabihin mo na lang. Let's say, for example, ng isang sasakyan is, let's say, for example, ang fair market value niya is nasa 900,000 but it was sold at 500,000 or 300,000. Then that could be gross inadequacy of price. What happens if there is gross inadequacy of price? In ordinary sale, take note, it may be invalidated. Or if such inadequacy shocks one conscience, it may be invalidated. So ordinary sale, meaning in an ordinary sale transaction, pwedeng ma-invalidate ang sale because of gross inadequacy of price. But in an execution sale, ano yung execution sale? In a public auction, di ba? In a public auction or in a foreclosure sale, yan ang execution sale. It remains valid. Valid pa rin siya. Why? This is due to the fact that in execution sale, there is a right to redemption on the part of the judgment debtor. Sir, ba't nagkaroon ng judgment debtor? Parang magulo. Tandaan natin, itong execution sale or public auction or foreclosure sale, nangyayari ito kapag na-foreclose yung property. Whether chattel mortgage or real estate mortgage yan. Okay? Kapag hindi kayo nakabayad kasi dyan sa mortgage na yan, itong mortgage, i-discuss natin yan later sa credit transaction. Yan yung parang ginawa mong collateral or sinangla kung real property, kung personal property. Okay? Kapag hindi mo yan nabayaran, pwede yang ibenta sa execution sale, which is either public auction or foreclosure sale. Okay? Ikaw dyan yung debtor. Kasi hindi mo nga nabayaran di ba? Pero ikaw na debtor, meron kang right na i-redeem yung property na yan sa execution sale. Usually 1 year to redeem. Hence, no loss on the judgment debtor but rather a gain from the low value of sale. Bakit? Sa ordinary sale, pwedeng invalid kapag inadequate yung price kung ganito ang pricing. Sa execution sale, valid siya. Bakit? Kasi kung binenta yan sa execution sale ng, let's say for example, 500,000 lang, ikaw na judgment debtor na dating may-ari niyan, pwede mo siyang mabili in a much lower price which is very advantageous to you. There is no loss on your part. Rather, you can get back your property. Okay? Kaya ko siya dinecipher ang execution sale sa ordinary sale. Okay? Characteristics of contract of sale. Consensual kasi nga there is consent, there is meeting of the minds perfected upon consent. Bilateral, there are two parties, the seller and the buyer are bound then they both have their obligations, the seller to transfer and deliver, the buyer to pay the purchase price. Onerous or onerous sa iba, onerous sa akin, there is a valuable consideration or burdensome consideration. Mayroong price na babayaran. Commutative, the thing of value is exchanged for equal value, whether in money or in equal value. And then nominate siya because the civil code or the law gives it a special name. Ang nominate may pangalan. Ang tawag sa kanya, contract of sale. Principal, because it can stand on its own, it's independent. Okay? A contract of sale can stand on its own. Hindi siya magre-rely sa ibang contracts. Okay? Unlike mortgage na pwede siyang mag-rely sa ibang contracts. Diba? Itong contract of sale, it stands on its own. Problem. Tagal pa na mag-discuss kapag may recitation. On January 19, 1985, ABNC executed a document entitled Receipt of Down Payment in Favor of R, which is reproduced here under. Mr. Carl, I want your answer on this one. Basa mo na yan, ha? Ito daw yung laman ng Receipt of Down Payment. Receipt of Down Payment, 1,240,000, total amount down payment 50,000, balance of 1,190,000. In the receipt of down payment, okay, ang nakalagay, received from Ms. R the sum of 50,000 pesos purchase price of our inherited house and lot in the total amount of 1,240,000. We bind ourselves to effect the transfer in our names from our deceased father, the transfer certificate of title immediately upon receipt of the down payment above stated. On our presentation of the TCT already in our name, we will immediately execute the deed of absolute sale of said property, and Ms. R shall immediately pay the balance of 1,190,000. On January 15, 1985, binayaran ni Q, mother of R, yung down payment. February 6, the property was transferred in their names, meaning in the name of ABNC. ABC, however, on February 18, ABC sold the property to Y sa ibang party. For this reason, ABNC canceled the contract with R and deposited the down payment in the bank account of Q in trust for R. On February 22, 1985, Q filed the complaint for specific performance. Question: is the receipt of down payment a perfected contract of sale? Contestant number 1, Mr. Carl Caligiran. What is your answer?
Wait lang, sir. Wait lang.
Ulitin natin ha. Okay? Noong January 19, 1985, si A, B, and C nag-execute ng document na receipt of down payment in favor of R. So, i-take down nyo na yung parties. Ang laman ng receipt of down payment ay ito, 1,240,000 less 50, 1,190 balance. Ano pa yung laman? Ito pa ang laman. Received from Ms. R the sum of 50,000 pesos. Ito, ang gumawa nito si A, B, at C. Yan, bibenta daw nila yung na-inherit nilang house and lot. We, si A, B, and C, bind ourselves to effect the transfer in our names from our deceased father. The transfer certificate of title immediately upon receipt of the down payment above stated. On our presentation of the TCT, already in our name, we will immediately execute the deed of absolute sale of said property and Ms. R shall immediately pay the balance of 1,190. Ito nga. So, nag-execute ng receipt of down payment, tinransfer na yung property kay A, B, and C. Pero, imbes na ibenta ni A, B, and C kay R, binenta niya sa ibang tao kay Y. For this reason, A, B, and C canceled the contract with R and deposited the payment in the bank account of Q and thus for R. Nag-file ngayon ng kaso si Q. Yung representation of R. Is the receipt of down payment, ito ba na receipt of down payment? Ay, joke. A perfected contract of sale, Mr. Carl Kaligiran.
Sir, I think yes po. Kasi they agreed po sa price and may meeting of the minds naman din po. And yung complaint na lang po dyan is liable na pa po yung si A, B, and C kasi po binenta po nila yung yung object, sir.
Yung lupa, house and land.
Yung lupa sa iba po, and I think yun po yung
So your answer is
sagot, sir.
yes.
Kasi may meeting of the mind po, sir, and they have agreed naman po in sa price po.
Yeah, so the answer is yes, it is a perfected contract of sale. Tama. Mr. Carl Kaligiran. Tama.
Sir?
Tama, yes ang sagot mo. Yes, it is a perfected.
Yes po.
Oh, sino pang, meron pa bang iba? Sino gusto mag-try? Anyone? Anyone? Tawag ba ako? Mr. Carl,
Yes po, sir.
yun ang last na nakausap mo? Baka mag-start.
Sir?
Yun ang last na classmate mo ang nakausap mo today.
Wala po ata, sir. Pero
Sa chat. Yun ang last na nakausap mo.
sa GC lang po ata yun, sir. GC
Yun
po
ang last na
ng
nakausap mo. Sino maalala mo?
si Fel po.
Oh, Stephen daw. Mr. Stephen. Saan ka? Mr. Stephen. Anong pangalan ni Mr. Stephen?
Hello, sir.
Stephen, Felimar naman yun.
Yes, sir.
Stephen din pangalan mo?
Felimar, ano to, sir? Fel.
Hindi, iba. Hindi ikaw. Tapos ka na eh. Mr. Carl.
Yes,
iba
sir.
pa. Anong
Sir, wait lang.
anong number?
Number 10 po.
Precious. My precious. Balisi.
Yes, sir.
Oh. Do you agree with the answer of Mr. Carl?
Sir, I agree po kasi since yung the receipt of down payment po is sinign po nung A, B, and C po. Then, sila po yung may liable kasi binenta po nila dun sa Y instead po kay R. Then, yung contract po of sale po, sir, is considered as conditional contract po.
Why?
Kasi meron po silang nakasulat doon na, sabi po doon na we bind ourselves to a transfer of certificate of title immediately upon receipt of the down payment above stated, sir. Yung sa deceased nung father po nila ata, sir.
Yes, okay. Thank
Yes,
you, Miss Precious.
yes, sir.
So, both answers are actually correct. Because if you can read from here pa lang, the seller, A, B, and C, already bound themselves to transfer the said property. Sabi pa nga nila, to transfer nila yung TCT upon receipt of the down payment. And na-receive na nila yung down payment. So therefore, there is now that obligation to transfer the property. Ngayon, kaya lang naman dito nagkakaso kasi ang sinasabi ang kiniklaim lang naman nila, this is actually an actual case. Ang sinasabi lang naman kasi nila, wala namang deed of sale. Ang meron lang, acknowledgement receipt lang. Resibo lang meron. Receipt lang ng down payment. Pero ito ang nakalagay kasi dyan. Oh. Hindi nakaprint ka na, sulat lang yan. Siyempre. Sinabi na nila dyan, they already bound themselves. And the buyer already did this part of paying the down payment, although meron pa siyang balance na 1,190. Pero ang sabi nila, kapag binayaran yung DP, ita-transfer na nila yung lupa na dapat ginawa ni A, B, and C. But instead, they sold it to another. Okay? The parties had agreed to a conditional contract of sale, consummation of which is subject only to successful transfer of the certificate of title from the name of A, B, and C's father to their names. So, both of the answers are actually correct. Galing, galing talaga. Options or option contract. An option contract is where an owner of property agrees with another person that he shall have the right to buy his property at a fixed price within a certain time. Okay? An option is a contract. So, yan na naman tayo. Contract na naman. There should be consent, object, and cause or consideration. Okay? Ang consent dyan is that an owner of property or a would-be seller agrees that another person that he shall have, itong another person is your would-be buyer. They have the right to buy his property at a fixed price at a certain time. Okay, let's say for example, sabi ni buyer, seller, wag mo naman munang ibenta yung property mo. Bigyan mo ko ng 10 araw, bibiling ko yan. Okay? That could be. Ang object, of course, is that he will not, or the seller will not sell his property to anyone within a certain period of time. Itong cost or consideration is there is a money involved. Merong consideration. Let's say for example, seller, huwag mo na ibenta yung property. Bigyan mo ko ng 10 araw. Bibiling ko yan. Ito, bigyan kita 5K para huwag mong ibenta sa iba. That is an option contract. Take note, an option contract is not a purchase, but merely secures a privilege to buy. Kumbaga, binibili mo yung privilege to buy para wala nang bumili pa na iba. Okay, nire-reserve mo siya. But, take note, merong consideration. Okay, malaki ang difference kung wala siyang consideration. It is also called an unaccepted offer. Earnest money naman. Ito kasi magkatabi kasi itong option at earnest money. When we say earnest money, this is the money given by the buyer to the seller to bind the bargain. Okay? It constitutes an advance payment and deducted from the total price and as proof of the perfection of the contract. So in this instance, parehas na merong money involved, but under under your earnest money, it constitutes an advance payment and it forms part of the purchase price. Meaning, kung advance payment yan at kasama siya ng purchase price, ibig sabihin, perfected na yung sale. Okay? Compared to an option contract, kahit pa nagbigay ka ng 5K, itong 5K, hindi siya kasama ng purchase price. At this point, wala pang perfected contract. You are only securing a privilege to buy. Gusto mong ikaw ang bibili nun, kaya nagbayad ka ng time, kumbaga bumili ka ng time para hindi niya i-offer sa iba. While for earnest money, parang down payment mo na ito. Diba? Parang sinasabi mo, kunwari 1 million yung purchase price, nag-down ka ng 200,000, that is an earnest money. That means that you are in good faith telling the seller that you are going to buy this property. Okay? Ayan. Earnest money and option money differentiated. It is part of the purchase price for earnest money, while for option money, it is distinct. Iba siya sa purchase price. Earnest money is given only when there is already a sale or when the sale is already perfected. Pero sa option money, wala pang sale. Hindi pa na-perfect yung sale. Earnest money, the buyer is bound to pay the balance, of course. Kasi part na ng purchase price yung earnest money. But for option money, the would-be buyer is not required to buy. So under the option money, okay, let's say for example, gaya ng example natin kanina, 10 days, kapag nag-lapse yung 10 days at nag-decide si buyer na hindi niya nabibilin yung property, then he may do so. Pero yung 5K, hindi niya na pwedeng bawiin. Why? Because it is not part of the purchase price. Okay? Binigyan niya yung 5K na yun para hindi ibenta ni seller within 10 days. And kung after 10 days hindi niya binili, then waive na yung 5K. Pwede ba siguro isang slide? Okay pa kayo? Okay pa. Contract for a piece of work. A contract for a piece of work may be distinguished from a contract of sale by the inquiry as to whether the thing transferred is one not in existence and which would never have existed but because of the order of the person desiring it. Ganito ang contract for a piece of work. Kasi minsan na pag hahalo nilang contract of sale sa contract of piece of work. Attorney, paano naman mangyayari yun? Let's say for example, meron isang manufacturer, seller manufacturer ng furnitures. Okay? So isa sa mga furnitures na binibenta nila is a table. Okay? If yung bibilhin mo is nandun sa inventory or nandun sa display, ayun, that is a contract of sale. Kasi pipili ka lang naman eh. Bibili ka eh. Diba? Kahit pa, let's say for example, wala sa inventory, pero nandun sa menu or nandun sa book nila na pwede mong orderin, that is a contract of sale. Why? Because it is offered by the seller or manufacturer. Nandyan na siya. Although wala lang available na stock, nandyan na siya. it is a contract of sale. But, if yung orderin mo na table is hindi nag-exist, wala sa product list nila, walang ganun na table, ikaw ang nagbigay ng specifications, ng height, ng details, ng measurement, ikaw lahat ang nagbigay. And ginawa nila ng design specifically for you. It only existed because you said so. Ganito gusto kong table, ganito, ganyan. That is a contract for a piece of work. That is more of a contract of a piece of work. Why? Because it is one that is not in existence and would have never existed kung hindi ka nag-order sa kaartehan mo, sa mga details na gusto mo. Wala sanang ganyan na table, but because you want na may ganyang table, that is a contract for a piece of work. Okay? So yun ang difference niya sa contract of sale. Ito, meron pala akong example. X and Y stipulated in their contract that Y would manufacture an order of X 20,000 vinyl frogs and 20,000 vinyl musheads according to the samples specified and approved by X. Y do not ordinarily, tandaan niyo ito guys, Y do not ordinarily manufacture these products but only upon order of X at the price agreed upon. From this instance pa lang, this is a contract for a piece of work. Okay, why? Because this is not a product that is ordinarily offered by Y. Ginawa niya lang ito because of the order of X and at the price agreed upon. Okay, I hope that's clear. And then, try lang natin tapusin ito siguro. Okay lang ba? Saglit lang naman. Pero, anong slide pa lang to? Madami kasi ito guys, tuloy natin next meeting. Dasyon in pagor or dasyon in payment. Okay? The debtor, ibig sabihin, basta nakabasa ka na ng debtor, ibig sabihin, meron silang obligation. Merong separate na contract yan. Kung may debtor, merong creditor. Offers another thing to the, yun na nga, creditor. Tama, merong creditor. Who accepts it as equivalent of payment of an outstanding debt. Offers another thing. The debtor offers another thing to the creditor who accept it as equivalent of an outstanding debt. Let's say, for example, may utang ako kay Miss Precious. Okay, ako si debtor, si Precious si seller. Okay. Let's say, for example, ang balance ng utang ko kay Precious is 10,000. Okay? 10,000 yung balance ng utang ko. Pag nag-offer ako kay Precious na, hey, Miss Precious, invest na bayaran ko yung utang ko, bigay ko na lang itong napaglumaan ko na cellphone, this is worth more or less 10,000 pesos. If Precious accept it, then that is what we call dasyon in pago or dasyon in payment. This is not a contract of sale. Okay? This is dasyon in payment. Ang dasyon in payment, there must be an existing debt. Tama? Merong existing debt. Debtor offers another thing, yung cellphone, as payment. There is difference between the obligation and the thing offered. Of course, itong cellphone na to, hindi ko naman sure kung 10,000 yan, more or less 10,000 yan. And agreement of extinguishment upon delivery or transfer. Sabi ko sa kanya, kay Precious, imbes na bayaran ko yung utang ko, ito na lang. Bigay yung cellphone ko, which is more or less worth 10,000. Okay? That is dasyon and pago or dasyon in payment. Okay. We end there because it's already 7:31 and then ako ma-report. Okay? So, ito kasing unang part is parang summary siya. Parang madami tayong napasadahan na ma-lecture natin next meeting. So, we'll continue next meeting. May tanong lang ako. Ano ang Anong next na article natin? 1459. Ano ang ano nyo guys? Ano ang ano ang free time nyo